It may be too late to restore full national democracy to Britain and Europe, writer and commentator Mark Tapson has warned. Transnational structures like the EU and shady NGOs are far too entrenched. The US, however, could give the rest of the West hope. Tapson joins me now to discuss why he believes our elites are subverting the nations they lead. So thank you so much for joining me. One thing that's kind of uniting all of the countries in the West at the moment is the fact that immigration is, in my country, at the top of voters' concerns, and I'm sure it's up around the top in most Western countries. You'd think that maybe the left wanting to hold on to power would maybe heed some of that.
Originals, I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
Maybe control the borders, but they just don't seem willing to be. Why do you think that is? Does immigration form part of a greater ideology that they have a huge commitment to?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think that the left pays little or no attention to what the people want, because the left, largely speaking, or at least these globalist elites who are responsible for what's happening across the Western world, they see themselves as really knowing what those people need for themselves, as opposed to listening to what the people want. That's sort of the leftist way, is to, especially among the elites, is to think we know best how people should be living. We know best how to organize and run society. And the little people just really need to go along with the plan. And I think that's, what that's led to. Well, part of the problem, in fact, maybe the entire problem, is the worldview of these globalist elites. They are totalitarian at heart, they're collectivist, and they believe fervently in the perfectibility of society. The conservative view of human nature is that we are fallen, imperfect beings who can never create heaven on earth. And so that awareness kind of shapes and is our starting point for organizing and maintaining society. But the left believes that we can create this utopian vision, and as I always say, utopian dreams always lead to dystopian nightmares. And so this utopian vision that they have, that they can create this perfectly multicultural globalist society, has led to what I call a civilizational crisis all across the West. Some places worse than others, of course, but it's a crisis of the breakdown of law and order, of social trust and civic life, and in the process, the nation state, the traditional nation state, and national sovereignty are being sort of cast aside intentionally.
The unravelling of Whitehall under the new guard, just a few days after Andy Burnham walked through the front door of number 10 Downing Street, the political landscape in the United Kingdom has managed to spin into even deeper chaos than anything witnessed during the uneasy tenure of Keir Starmer. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, where we strip away the polished press releases and look straight at the mechanisms grinding away beneath the surface of British governance. Before we examine how this fresh administration is already colliding with harsh reality, please make sure to subscribe to Britain Underneath and click that notification icon. Your support truly helps this channel stay independent and keeps us uncovering what is really going on behind closed doors. So let us dive straight into the heart of this unfolding situation.
But why is multiculturalism so central to this worldview?
That's a good question. Multiculturalism essentially says that all cultures around the world are equally valid and valuable, except Western civilization, except their own culture. There's a self-loathing there that has overtaken all of Western cultural institutions. Because the left believes that Western civilization is sort of uniquely oppressive in world history, uniquely exploitative and evil, and that our history is in the West is one long story of us abusing other cultures. And so there's this sense that Western civilization must be dismantled and marginalized, if not actually destroyed, and made way for this beautiful multicultural rainbow of global unity.
And I suppose if you've got people from every country spread around the world, then you don't really have nations as defined by the homogenous people living in each of them is probably an easier way to have kind of transnational governance, isn't it?
Yes, and this has taken place over the course of decades. It isn't something that happened overnight, and it started. You could say that it started with education. That the left, the globalist left, took over the arena of education. In fact, all the cultural arenas and institutions over the last at least half century or so, and they've worked on that intentionally. And when you take over those cultural outlets and those cultural organs, you can spread this narrative from the ground up. It used to begin in university. Now it starts as early as pre-K. But you can spread this narrative that Western civilization, as I mentioned, is sort of uniquely oppressive, and that you should learn to hate your own civilization and culture, and so it's been a long time coming, but we've reached this point where even at the ground level, you could say, you've got younger generations that simply buy into this narrative that the globalist elites have spread throughout the Western world.
What you wrote in your article, which I found actually, something that we don't touch on enough, you wrote, the fundamental mandate of the nation state, the protection of its territory and the preservation of its culture has been systematically abandoned. Now, that's so obvious, but we don't always pick up on it, that we have people running our countries who are actively trying to subvert their sovereignty.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad that you mentioned that word subvert, because this is subversion and it's intentional. These globalist elites have a vision of society that requires coercion to accomplish. So they're totalitarians at heart, and so national sovereignty has to be cast aside, and even the sovereignty of local communities. So all the way down to the level of local towns and even smaller villages and communities. That authority has to be removed in order to take away the people's ability to control their own lives and the way that they live and organize and manage their communities and society at large. So this national sovereignty has to be dismantled. That's been the goal, and it's happening. We've gradually, throughout the West, including maybe to a lesser extent in the United States, but to some extent, we've given too much authority to these globalist institutions. We've given too much weight to their influence and their opinion, and I have become fairly radicalized about this at this point, and I think we need to reject any of these transnational organizations, because in the long run, the vast majority of them are anti-Western, certainly anti-American, and I think that we've just got to detach ourselves from these kinds of organizations and keep our vision focused on reclaiming national sovereignty for all the nations throughout the Western world.
When Keir Starmer stepped aside after months of relentless pressure, internal turmoil and severe policy disputes, many within Westminster dared to dream that a change of leadership would instantly restore calm to a weary nation. Instead, the arrival of Andy Burnham has triggered an immediate and dramatic acceleration of political friction. Within 48 hours of taking office, the new Prime Minister found himself caught between the radical demands of his backbenchers and the cold, unyielding reality of empty public coffers. The promises of sweeping reform, regional economic overhauls, and an aggressive stance on fixing public services have collided head-on with market nervousness and relentless political opposition. If you thought the previous administration felt unstable, what we are observing right now is a whole new order of institutional friction.
Now is the perfect moment to take a breath, sit tight, and stay informed, because the pace at which these developments are unraveling is extraordinary. While Starmer was endlessly criticised for his cautious and technocratic hesitation, Burnham has chosen to sprint straight into the crossfire. By announcing immediate executive interventions on social care, local council funding, and public transport ownership, he has effectively declared war on multiple entrenched interests all at once. The opposition parties have already seized on these early moves, claiming the administration is hurtling back toward reckless fiscal policies. Meanwhile, financial commentators are raising sharp warnings about how these massive commitments will actually be funded.
Surely there are some good things that come from them if maybe you just limit their remit, or do you think that they naturally always try and self-perpetuate?
Well, I think they naturally try to self-perpetuate. I mean, this is not to say that these organizations have never done anything that we could view as positive in the world, but in the long run, their goal is ultimately, and I hate to keep using the word totalitarian, but it's ultimately control and to expand their power and influence and to grow. And this is just sort of the nature of the beast. And I think we have to be very conscious about that and not see all of these organizations as simply humanitarian entities that always do what's in everyone's best interest.
Well, they're marching towards this utopia, so they surely have a vision in their head of what they think the great world would be like. And I would imagine that would be a society with low crime, or prosperous society, or a free society. But we've gone backwards in all of those things over the last 20, 30 years. So surely anyone would self-reflect and go, this isn't going to plan, but they don't seem to be.
Yeah, and I have to say I'm a lifelong Anglophile and even Europhile, and it breaks my heart to see what these globalist elites have done and are doing to the people of the UK and continental Europe and even Australia and Canada too, for that matter, all across the West. It breaks my heart to see what's happening, because Western civilization is in a state of intensifying and accelerating decay, and I think a lot of it, an awful lot of it, has to do with this shift toward transnational government and away from national sovereignty. We have got to reclaim, as individual nation states, and even as a larger, broader entity of Western civilization, we have got to reclaim our cultural identity. We've got to protect that cultural identity in order to maintain our civilizational freedoms, our rights, our prosperities. All of those things are unique to the West, and we've got to maintain those cultural values.
Do you think that's happening under Trump?
To a certain extent, yes. I mean, yes, I think that's he has certainly inspired and taken some steps in that direction. For example, this recent attack on the Smithsonian Institution, which was had become a very subversive organization over the last few years. And the Trump administration came out and just blasted it for its anti-American and anti-Western propaganda that was spreading throughout his museum. And so that Trump has definitely inspired that. I don't always agree with everything Trump says or does, but certainly the MAGA movement that he has inspired, Make America Great Again, I think that's definitely a positive step in the right direction. Trump is one of the very few politicians, although the fact that he's not really a politician has a lot to do with this, but he's one of the very few people in politics who understands the culture and the value of the culture and the importance of fighting the culture wars. That's kind of rare among Republican politicians here in the United States, but it's becoming less rare, and that's definitely a positive thing.
If you are finding this breakdown insightful and want to ensure you never miss an update on the shifts shaping our country, please consider taking a brief second to subscribe to the channel. It honestly takes just a single click, but it means the world to us and helps Britain Underneath continue delivering rigorous, independent analysis every single week. What makes this transition so fascinating and frankly concerning is how quickly the honeymoon period has dissolved. The left of the party is already expressing deep anxiety over cabinet selections that maintain a strict stance on border security and defence spending, while the right accuses the leadership of preparing a raft of hidden tax hikes. Rather than unifying a fractured parliament, the opening moves of this new premiership have managed to alienate almost every faction simultaneously. It turns out that stepping out from the regional stage into the fierce glare of national government comes with a sharp reality check, and the margin for error is non-existent.
I strongly encourage you to watch till the end of this video, as the strategic implications of these first few days will set the tone for the entire year ahead. The central question facing the country today is no longer whether the new Prime Minister possesses grand ambitions, but whether the machinery of state can survive the sheer pressure of trying to deliver them without fracturing completely. We are witnessing a high-stakes gamble where every policy announcement risks triggering another political crisis.
What do you think the remedy is then? I mean, as you say, Europe in a way, maybe on the immigration front, America is further down the line than us. But when it comes to the governance, we are way further down the line than you. This started with the EU, didn't it? And I don't know how much you know about the EU being an American, but we tried to get out of it, but we're not really. You know, we enact the same laws constantly. We're not free from Europe at all. Canada is going down the same route. How do we reverse it?
Well, that's a tough question, especially for you in Europe, because as you said, you're much farther along in terms of this loss of national sovereignty and the threat to your cultural identity. And I honestly, at this point, don't think that there is a purely political solution to what's happening. I mean, certainly it would be great if these globalist elites, such as the ones in your own government, I mean, certainly if those people could be voted out of power, that would be ideal. But I think it's too late at this point for Europe. I think Europe has to do and is headed toward solutions that are not entirely political. And I'll just go ahead and say that I think civil war, to some extent, here and there, not all over Europe, is going to be inevitable. I've been saying this for years and years. Because it's things, once you allow authority to be taken away from you or controlled by someone who doesn't have your best interests at heart, it's very, very hard to get it back. And as I said, if it can be done through political means, then that's fantastic. But I'm beginning to be very doubtful of that as the only possibility, the only solution. I mean, politically, first of all, the globalist elites have to be removed from power, and then from that point on, you have to take measures such as airtight border enforcement, swift and mass deportations. The government has to help promote assimilation and patriotic civic education and cultural unity. Constitutional law and national sovereignty just has to be reasserted, and the rejection of these transnational bodies has to be complete. Those are political steps, though, and to some extent cultural steps, but I'm not sure that these globalist elites that are currently in power across Europe are going to go without a fight. And then also you have the whole issue of the Islamization of certain communities and countries throughout Europe, which is also going to be a fight that I think is ultimately, in fact, it's already turned violent. And I don't see any way of avoiding that.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. Please do hit that subscribe button right now if you haven't already. Your support truly keeps this channel alive and allows us to keep bringing you the raw truth. Make sure to return for our upcoming videos as this situation unfolds, and keep questioning what happens beneath the surface.